That little beep beep beep. Pintail white chicks. Again, that little beep beep beep. High-pitched voice. What do you hear? I'm sitting in my bird garden today. And if you're interested in birds, you gotta listen to this. Hi, it's Robbie from Southern California. When we want to watch for birds coming in our garden, we don't have to see them. The first thing we need to do is see with our ears. We have to hear them. And I'll go more over that in a few minutes. I am going to change my bird garden over. I'm going to do a lot of different things to it because I don't want to just put out food for the hummingbirds, which I'm doing, and flowers. I actually want to change my garden where it's not just a place for them to come eat seed, but it's a place for them to find their habitat. I think that's really important. Now we're going to go over what you hear here, because what I'm hearing in this particular video right now is multiple birds. You're going to hear house finches, scrub jays, goldfinches. If you are aware of what you're hearing, you'll be more aware of what is coming to your garden. And it's amazing how these birds, when you start to help them out, what they'll end up doing is depending on you. I've got a bird here from Africa, non-native here, that is very dependent on me, especially this morning. It's a young baby bird, not in color, and yet it will stand at my feet to feed because the scrub jays are coming in. The scrub jays can be quite nasty. They can eat little birds. Keep that in mind. They tend to go more for the nests. But the point is, they're still predators when it comes to these little tiny finches. And I'll explain more about what is going on in a few minutes as to who raised that little African bird, since it wasn't his parents. So when we start to set up our yard, what we really want to do is set it up in multiple ways. Yes, we should put food out. I absolutely believe that, because you're never going to grow enough and you want to entice them in. The other thing too is give them plants that they want to eat. And you may not be able to find it. I'm going to have to grow it, and it's not going to be that hard. In fact, if you're feeding the birds, the odds are if you get good bird food, you've already got your resources and it will be free. And that's what I'm doing here. And that's why I'm bringing in so many different small birds that are non-native, but introduced one way or another, that now have found our yard, our gardens, and know that they can breed here if they want, but the main thing, they can feed. And keep in mind, water is the most important thing. So if you're saying, hey, Robbie, I can't hear the birds over the water, that's because the water is very important to them. That's the main thing that brings them in first, is they hear water to come take a drink, and then as they're here, they stop and realize there's food here too. It's the perfect habitat for them because they've got food, they've got water, and they have shelter. And it's not just food, they have food that they absolutely want. Maybe they don't need it because they may not be able to find it in other places, but they want it. It's something for their species, it's something they recognize, and it's easy to feed on. So let's go over some of the birds that are here this morning, just a few, because I've got over 50, between 50 and 60 small birds, but we're just going to go over a few that are literally here with me at this moment. But I recognize them first by their sound, and then I wait and sit back and let them come to me so I can see them, because you're going to hear them before you see them. Now, there's a lot of fascinating things about these two little birds that are at my feet. They're literally not even 2 feet from me. Look at them. They look very plain, but let me tell you something. Go try finding them at a pet store, and you're going to spend $100, $200 a piece for them. Those are pintail whites from Africa, but they have been bred and raised here in the United States in the wild. Now, what's fascinating about them is their parents are spice finches right now. They're really foster parents, and they are from Asia. So it's a complete different bird, different country, and even different habitat as far as the way they feed, which is interesting. Their parents feed up. They feed on grasses, green grasses and seeds, and they hang off of the plants and eat. Where the pintail whitus that you saw at my feet are ground-eating birds. They like to go down in the ground in Africa and look around and hang out where it's safe for them to eat. What's fascinating about these two little guys is watch the bird coming up. He's going to see me, the house finch, and go, wait a minute, what's going on? And walk away. You see the dove behind? Doesn't want to get too close. See how the other bird took off? Same thing with the dove. These two little guys figured out, I'm that big elephant, or I'm that big lion. They can sit next to me, eat freely and safely because the scrub jays and none of the other birds are going to bother them. So they come to my feet to eat. These are babies now, but they are eating on their own to feed, even though their parents or foster parents are feeding right now in the trays up higher. I find that so fascinating that as they were raised in the nest and then brought out and brought to the feeders, and I'd see them in the feeders with their spice finch parents, again, foster parents really, they learned to feed and crack seed, but then as they started to get older enough to eat on their own, they realized somehow in their DNA, their structure, from their true parents, they feed on the ground. And they feed next to animals that protect them to keep, let's say, smaller cats or birds away, big birds, predators. This is what they've learned. And they're going back to their DNA, not what they were taught by their parents that raised them. Now, the reason I say that those are foster parents is there are pintail whitus that are all over the world in different places, and we do have them here in the United States. They were introduced, who knows, they got loose or whatever, but they don't build a nest and they don't raise their own young. And what they do is they find a host. And here in the United States, they found, well, in let's say California, the spice finches that are also introduced from Asia, birds that escape, not doing any harm. And they found their nest, and so they go and they lay an egg in their nest, but sometimes they lay more. A couple years ago, we saw one pair of spice finches raising 4 baby pintail whitus. So what I'm doing in my garden now is not just planting flowers and vegetables and putting out seed and water, which is so important to bring the birds. I'm going to create small habitats for certain birds. That means I want to grow the seeds that they want, and I'm going to grow it from the seeds that I have. And I think this is going to be fascinating. We can take a little walk and I'll show you what's going on. And you can do this too, whether it's in your yard or a balcony. And I'll show you how we can get this done where you can do this and bring in some birds that are in your area. Because this is what I've done. By living here and putting out things in the garden, food and water, we've brought in a ton of birds. So here is my garden that I call the bird garden. This area is designated for the birds. The reason I feed here is all these cross beams from trees that I put here deter hawks. Hawks have to swoop when they catch a bird. They just don't walk in and say, hey, I'm taking you. So if they can't swoop in, they stay away. They may come to the tree and look around, but they can't swoop. By the time they come and land there, the birds are gone because they are very aware of them. So I'm going to continue to use this for feeders, and I may put some feeders throughout here as well and more water features. But this is the difference I'm going to do. Add in more flowers for hummingbirds and pollinators because it brings in the hummingbirds not just to the feeders that we have here, but also to the flowers, which is important. So they've got flowers, they've got nectar, pollen, insects, water to bathe, and water to drink. They've got everything they need, including shelter. That's all they need, and that's what brings in the hummingbirds. As far as the other birds, some of them come in just because they found seed here, water, and maybe water to drink and water to bathe, and that's about it, and they leave. But if I give them more shelter and more of their habitat, it will bring in more. Now, what does that mean as far as you're putting out seeds? Well, let's put it this way. I feed a lot of birds, as you can see, seed, but that's not only their diet. A lot of them need green seed, and this is green seed. See the seeds growing here? Can you see this one here? This is very important to a lot of birds. This is fresh food, like we take a salad or something green to eat. A lot of birds need that. And that is bringing in my spice finches, and now even my pintail whitus. But the main thing is the spice finches come in for that. They recognize that food, and this was actually grown out of the bird food. So here is how you can grow your own seeds for the birds. This is a really good parakeet mix with some finch mix in there. I just sprinkle it on a flower pot that already has soil in it. Then if you want, you can add in a couple flowers. Zinnias is a good one to add because sometimes they have seeds that the birds may want to eat from that too. Just put a few of those in. You don't want too many flowers growing around the sides. Now cover the top with soil. Remember, you already have soil in this pot, but cover the top. Now a good watering is what you need. Good soaking. Now you're almost done, but you can't leave it that way. I put tulle on here. This is a fabric, Tulle. That keeps out insects as well as birds, because birds love new seeds that start to grow. And this way you'll grow all those beautiful seeds for your birds as well as flowers, just like my zinnias are growing in the back. Keep it protected, and once they start growing, take the tulle off and keep it watered, and you'll have all those seeds growing. So if you take the small seeds, put it in a flower pot, cover it so no insects get in there or other birds to eat the seeds as they're growing, you'll be able to grow some of your own seed. Now that seed is not going to be growing just because I'm going to grow all my own and not buy. Of course I'm going to buy because I'll never be able to grow enough. But that's their additive. That's very important to some of their diet. Here's another one. And this is what's bringing in a lot of different birds. This is absolutely, like I said, so important that they'll eat it green and they will eat it brown. The other things that they're eating as well is greens. They see all the tops of my plants are brown. A lot of the goldfinches come in there and they're eating all the seed heads up there. They eat lettuce seed as well. But the greens, they eat the greens as well as the seeds. So if you provide a lot of this for the birds, not only will they fly by, stop and eat, and then, just go on their way and leave, they'll start to think about staying. If you can create someplace like shelter. Now, you may not have an area with, trees, but let's say your neighbor or a hillside has trees. That would be their shelter way down there. So if you give them water to drink, water to bathe, and food to eat, they'll come to you and then they'll take off and go where the trees are. You can get everything they need by using your neighbor's surroundings or the city land with trees that they put around to beautify the properties and land. Well, they'll use that as shelter and use you for their food. And that is a win-win. Think about it. And you'll watch this garden change because I am going to add in a whole lot more food that they enjoy. It may not be their true native food, but close enough, because I'm going to grow fresh food from bird seed that I buy. Think about it. Finch mix or parakeet mix. Either one of those, the parakeet mix, you can grow millet out of that, white spray millet, and then with the finch mix, all different types of little seeds will grow. And you'll bring who knows how many little types of birds. So I hope I've given you some thoughts. Even if you do one thing, you don't have to do it all. You'll start to have nature come to you. I mean, after all, if they can't find it somewhere else, they're going to look as far as they can, as hard as they can, and hopefully they'll come to you. With that, have a wonderful day. And don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye-bye.